The face cam's back, finally, and we have a new wonderful background, isn't it? Isn't it also lovely? Pretty cool, right? If you do enjoy the video, then please subscribe, like, and comment something, because yeah, comments are cool, right? Anyway, let's get on with the video. Now, every driver has good races. Or Nick de Vries really didn't, because every single race of his was quite shit. Didn't score a single point. Monza was good. Every single race in AlphaTauri was quite shit, because he was quite shit, let's be real. But, well, every other driver has good races here and there. But every driver, or nearly, no, every driver has had a shit race. Like an absolutely shit race. They get from A to B and, well, they just don't. They're awful. So let's go over every single driver's worst race ever. In my opinion, of course. If your opinions are different, put them in the comments. But don't go bitching at me saying, oh no, wrong opinion. Fucking my opinions. Shut the fuck up. Thank you.
Yes, this is impressive. Now I'm coming on your camera, mate.
I really do think it's only fair if we start with the maestro himself. The maestro of crashing. Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc has had a fair share of bad races. Let's be real. Baku comes to mind, the I am stupid moment. We just can't forget that, can we? Or just like every Charles fan tries to forget Monaco 2023, because Ferrari is Ferrari. But I do think his worst race was France, Paul Ricard 2022. Not only did the championship slip away in those little dire seconds, yeah, the radio was also, it really hurt my soul. I turned off the TV instantly. I didn't want to see anything more. The second I heard the no, you know what I'm talking about. It was, I can't bear to watch this anymore. And the second everyone started spamming me saying, oh my god, Charles is shit, and his championship's hopes were over, get me out. But the hopes were over, just like Mick Schumacher's hopes of staying in Formula 1 for yet another season.
It's awesome. It's down to the men and women that are back at the factory.
And I think it's also only fair to put Hamilton next, or talk about Hamilton next, being Charles' teammate for 2025. Who really expected that? Because I didn't at all. Hamilton he doesn't really make that many mistakes, but when he does, it can be crucial. Like in Baku 2021. Now, I don't think this was his worst race ever, but it was a bad race. He basically had the win. Well, his hand was on the trophy. He was gonna get the win. But he had to go lock up after the safety car and, well, go back to last. He gift wrapped Checo and, well, put bubble wrap. He put nice little sprinkles on it. Nice little, what is it called? Nice little ribbon on it. And it was like, here, Checo, go have a win at Red Bull. Go enjoy it. Yeah, and maybe if Hamilton did win the race, the championship would have ended maybe a bit differently. But no, I think Hamilton's worst race was China 2007. Now that was a long time ago, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age even. But it was a detrimental race. Not only was Hamilton leading the it was the second to last race. Hamilton was leading the championship by a fair share of points ahead of Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso. It was his debut season, of course, let's not forget that. Well, he was going into the pits because it was quite wet, and yeah, let's change tyres, shall we? Because that's what you go into the pits for, unless you're serving a 5x. Well, he was going into the pits, and he kind of aquaplaned off, crashed into the wall, and was like, peace, I'm out, race over. And so was the championship. The championship was kind of over for him. McLaren and wet races isn't the best combination now, is it? But neither is Lando and race wins, so... Because he really didn't recover from that loss of points. He finished the championship in second, only 1 point away from winning. But if he didn't crash, championship could have been his. The first ever driver to win a championship in his debut season. What could have been, eh? What could have been?
What the fuck was he doing?
Hamilton's current teammate, George Russell, hasn't been in the sport for too long, but has made one of the races really do stand out. A really big mistake. A mistake that he can't forgive himself. Not only do the fans, they don't want to forgive him. I think we all know what I'm talking about. No, not Texas when he just T-boned Sainz. Singapore 2023. He's on fresh tyres, holding up Hamilton, who's clearly a bit faster. Last couple laps, last 5 laps. The win is, well, pretty much his if he can overtake Lando and Sainz, who are both on pretty old tyres. Can't overtake Lando, gets kind of annoyed. So what does he do? He clips the wall and this happens. Yep, he's out of the race, gifting Hamilton another podium. And George Russell, well, he misses out on another podium. Now, George Russell, he really could have gotten second, maybe even first if he could have overtaken them and not crashed. like George Russell does best. So Carlos Sainz finished first, and Lando finished second.
I'm moving up and down, side to side, like a roller coaster.
And now let's talk a bit more about Lando Norris, shall we? Lando, he's a pretty consistent driver, but does make a couple mistakes in quali here and there. Last season was very evident. But I think we all know where this is going. I clown this a lot. No, I'm not talking about Ferrari or their strategies. I'm still talking about Lando here. Because, it's funny, and funny shit is funny. Sochi 2021 was a roller coaster of a race. And every time I say it, it kind of makes me sad, but, it's a good joke here and there. Not only did he stick it on pole against Hamilton and Verstappen, the two title protagonists, championship protagonists, put it on pole, he was faster than both of them. Now that's quite impressive. And it was also impressive, he was leading the race for the majority of it. Until he wasn't, because he also aquaplaned into the stratosphere, and he tumbled down the order, had to pit, and instead of finishing first and winning the race, holding a trophy for the first time, the winner's trophy for the first time in his racing career, he finished 7th. Lando, please win in 2024, make me happy, because Sainz, Piastri, Ricciardo, they've both beaten you to a race win. It's starting to sound like a skill issue. Piastri was a rookie. It wasn't a race win, it was a sprint win, I know, but still. Next up, we're going to talk about Guanyu Zhou. Only been in the sport for 2 seasons, but he has had at least one minor inconvenience in, one memorable race. But in those 2 seasons has had, the biggest crash in the last, 5 years, let's say? I'm talking about Silverstone 2022. I think that's his worst race. It wasn't his fault at all, but the circumstances, it was a bad race for him. Tipped upside down through the gravel, done a little somersault and into the barriers. Yeah, bad race. I don't think there's much else to say, so I'm not going to say any more because that's just his worst race.
Push flat out.
Shut up!
Yuki-san Yuki Tsunoda. He also hasn't been in the sport for a while, and he's been improving steadily but surely ever since he joined. 2021 wasn't the greatest season, let's keep it a buckaroonie there. And 2022, it was better. 2023 was a lot better, but still, he kinda got put in the blender by Ricciardo in the last couple races. But with all of that said, I think his worst race was Silverstone 2022. Not only was he, decently off the pace of Gasly, he also kind of fucked Gasly over. Not in the way that Yuki probably wanted to, if you know what I mean. But yeah, Gasly probably had a shot at points, but Yuki, he kind of got in the way and did his own thing. Yeah, Gasly didn't score any points after that. Now yes, a lot of the 2021 season races I could put them in, but not only was he was off the pace back then, he did mistakes that, cost his own race. In this race, he kind of cost his own teammate, his best friend, and who really wants to do that? So, yeah, I think that's his worst race.
I'm a high-performance athlete. Athletes sweat. Sweat, baby. Sweat, sweat.
Now, Big Danny Rick has had a fair share of shitty races at McLaren. A lot of shit races. Big spinning out Sainz in Imola 2022. Or getting fucking yeeted off by Kevin Magnussen in Brazil in 2022. They were all quite shit that spring to mind. But I think his worst race by far was Monaco 2016. Not only was his qualifying quite mega, his race pace was also insane. Until pit stops. He comes into the pits and the mechanics aren't really ready for any tyre changes. So he's there for an eternity and another eternity. And then he comes out the pits and he gets overtaken. Sad times. Wasn't his fault at all. But it really was his worst race. Not by his own fault, as I just said, but by his team's. He could have won the race. Won a race at Monaco, which he did in 2018, so fair play because Ricciardo's the GOAT, of course. But yeah, 2016 was a rough weekend for my emotional status and probably everyone else's. Now, someone who you probably, really didn't expect to be on this list, or if you're new to F1, that is. But for all of us who are, have been watching for quite a while, Verstappen, he had a bad race a long time ago. Well, he's had a couple bad races, but one that really springs to mind, China 2018. Not only did he outqualify Ricciardo started in 6th, he also had a little moment with Verstappen He also had a little moment with Hamilton going off the track. He got a little antsy and was like, nah, I'm not going to have this. Then he tried to overtake Vettel. He kind of tapped him round the hairpin, and they both went into a pirouette. Ricciardo then swooped up, came from 6th, and won the race in a crazy fashion with some crazy overtakes on Bottas and so on and so forth. But Verstappen was just, well, he was off the track more than he was on the track. And it was just a poor race for him. Made Vettel very angry, who was the championship leader at the time, and that's something you really don't want to do. Fucking flame me in the comments and I'll come for you. I'll find your house, trust me.
Like I know exactly by millimeter the average penis size of a beaver.
Now, Turkey 2020 was a good race for a couple drivers. Perez, Hamilton, Vettel, but it was also quite bad for a number of drivers. Verstappen had a pretty poor start, stalling or getting just a really bad start at the beginning, and then while spinning behind one of the racing points. It was a poor race for him as well. But I think it was much worse for Valtteri Bottas. Not only did he spin going into turn 1, or the first couple corners, but then, you know, he got back on his feet, started to overtake some cars. But then around lap 20, he was like, nah, I've had enough. I'm going to spin again. He had like 2 or 3 or something like that spins in one race. Finished 14th, whilst his teammate, yes, Sir Lewis Hamilton, finished the race in 1st. Won the race without really any incidents. And also secured his 7th World Drivers' Championship that race. To add a tiny little salt into the wound. Just a poor race from Bottas. Now, Bottas has also had, well, a couple bad races in what's it called? Alfa Romeo, or Stake, or whatever you want to call it. But that was his worst race by far. Now, a driver that really hasn't crashed at all, but has DNF'd a lot in his career, around 70 odd times, and only 5 of those times it has been his mistake. A very consistent driver and a very good driver and a very old driver. Rumour has it that he was once with the dinosaurs back in a long time ago. He was friends with the dinosaurs, is what I'm trying to say. Yes, Fernando Alonso. In recent years, a race that comes to mind was Singapore 2023. A poor race. He was off the pace and, you know, silly mistakes, couple penalties here and there. Wasn't his best showing. But his worst race by far was definitely Japan 2007. Now, we've already talked about the 2007 season where Hamilton, you know, fucked up in China. But Alonso, he also, well, he fucked up, but this time in Japan. Yet again, losing on some crucial points. He crashed out, hits the curbs and was like, nah, I want to go to the wall, do a couple somersaults in the rain because it's, you know, nice and fun and there's low tire wear in the rain, and therefore I can do some donuts. But he crashed out the race, and that kind of made him lose grip of the championship. He came 3rd that season. Now, a driver that really can't drive in the last couple seasons, Sergio Perez has had a fair share of bad races. Yeah, but Qatar was something special. Not only was he off the pace, he had a bad qualifying. The sprint race, he kind of got, imagine this, a little Red Bull car is Sergio Perez, and he's driving, right? And he goes, yeah, imagine that, but with like other cars in between, and sprint race was poor. He DNF'd. Then the race, he started out the points. He climbs his way back up to P4, but then has to pit. Verstappen's in the lead, winning by like 75 minutes. And Perez, through all of his little conundrums, scrapes 1 point. Verstappen, he wins the race, and, you know, as a result, in that weekend, he also won the championship. So, yet again, just adding salt to the wound. Poor race, or poor weekend from Sergio Perez, just in general. And also added pressure from Ricciardo, just grinning behind, waiting for Perez to make another mistake. That was another mistake.
Oh, George, you are so bad!
Now, as per usual, each race has their own highs. Each driver has their own highs in each particular race, especially the winner, of course. 2020 Gasly was over the bloody moon when he won that race. But on the other hand, you have Alex Albon, who replaced Gasly earlier the season before. Yeah, not only was Alex Albon's qualifying quite poor, he He was also scrapping the Williams and, well, P17 and 18 for most of the race. He also finished out of the points and really couldn't make any moves forward. He only finished ahead of Max Verstappen because Max Verstappen DNF'd. And Max Verstappen had scored 6 podiums in 6 consecutive races before that race. And where was Alex Albon? Yeah, in the fucking bin. P17 in P5. Awful race for him. Now, Alex Albon had a ton of awful races with Red Bull, but things have changed recently with Williams, and he is the GOAT.
Oh my god! What did you do?
Also, speaking of Gasly, he's had, he's a consistent driver, but he really, doesn't crash that often. And back in his Red Bull days, I think Canada 2019 was, a poor race for him. A decent ways off Verstappen. Not in points-wise or, the way he finished the race. But he was, 45 seconds off of Verstappen by the end? That's in the same machinery. That's a country bloody... That's ages. That is a shit ton away. It was a tough weekend for him. He did score some, what was it, P8, P7, something like that, but still, a long ways off. A long ways off Verstappen.
Let me race at the moment. I will once the situation is settled a bit more.
Esteban Ocon has had a lot of bad races as well. 2017 Baku comes to mind when, him and Perez kind of griefed each other. Both DNF'd when they were, 4th, 5th, and maybe 6th? Or something like that. Also, Singapore 2018 comes to mind a lot with Perez. Seems to be, an ongoing theme. Or even his teammates. Yeah, that was a bad race where he got, he put his car where it really shouldn't have been. And he got smashed into the wall. 2023 was also, quite a poor season. Double DNF in Silverstone. The double DNF, I know that, but do I remember where? No. But I think his worst race, not by far, I think it was Brazil 2018. Not only did he, start near P20, P18, or P something along those lines. He was also nowhere the whole race, battling for scraps, nothing, absolute, not even for points, not even for P13. He was battling for P16. Verstappen then lapped him, and Ocon with his, big brain was like, nah, I don't want to be lapped. So he wants to unlap himself because he thinks he's faster than Verstappen, who's leading the race, who clearly has one of the fastest cars on the grid. And Esteban Ocon has been lapped and is P18 or something along those lines. So he goes to unlap himself, and he obviously crashed into Verstappen. Verstappen wasn't too happy about that, and neither was the whole paddock, and neither was the stewards, because they gave him a 10-second time penalty, and his race was pretty much over before it even started. It was a shit race, and just caused more drama, and even more people to hate Ocon more than they already hated him.
Hulkenberg.
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 Sag's mal ein bisschen männlich.
Hey.
Hulkenberg.
Hulkenberg.
There's a lot of crashes in Formula 1, but one that is quite memorable and we really won't ever forget was Spa 2018, Turn 1. Hulkenberg locks up and sends Alonso, or locks up into Alonso. Then Alonso goes flying over the top of Charles Leclerc. And luckily, that season was the first year of the Halo. Otherwise, Charles would probably be... So that's why I'm saying Spa 2018 was Hulkenberg's worst race. He not only ended his own race, he ended Charles's and Alonso's. It was a poor 30 seconds of the race whilst it lasted. And then for the rest of it, I don't know where he was. Probably chilling somewhere, bawling his eyes out, and big mistake, big mistake. Magnussen isn't the best driver, but, he's a good safe set of hands if you don't want the car crashed too often, unlike Mick Schumacher. But 2019 Silverstone was quite a poor race for him. Not only was he, a minute down after the first lap or something along those lines, around lap 10 to 15, the race just ended. He had contact with Grosjean at the start. Disappointing weekend. There's just not much else to say. He didn't score any points. There was contact, and then he tried to keep on going, but then, the race was ended.
Smooth operator. Smooth operator.
The last race Formula 1 has pretty much ever had, or not pretty much, but literally ever had, Abu Dhabi 2023. I think that was Sainz's worst race. Not only were Ferrari and Mercedes scrapping for P2 in the constructors, and somehow managed to lose that. Sainz also started near the back while Charles Leclerc was at the top scrapping for P2, P1, and, P3. Maybe not scrapping for P1 and P2, but definitely scrapping for P3. And he did get P3 in the end. But that really wasn't enough to help secure P2 in the constructors, because Sainz, well, he finished all the way down the order and didn't make any progress in the whole race. He didn't score any points and just didn't help the team at all. Mercedes, they nabbed P2 in the constructors, and yeah, all Charles could do was celebrate on the podium with his P3 podium, knowing that they lost in that little battle they had with Mercedes. And realistically, it was all Sainz's fault because he couldn't make enough progress in the race to score more points to help them secure P2.
I don't know what we're calling this, but basically we've got helmets on our head that are full of water.
Piastri has only had one season in Formula 1, but the race that really stands out as his worst was the 2023 Mexican Grand Prix. Not only did he start well in the top 10, but Lando started in P19, and by the end of the race, Lando Norris outscored him by a couple positions. That's a huge gap for Lando to gain to Piastri, and Piastri not to gain to other cars. With Lando's pace, if Lando started well in the top 10, who knows, maybe he could have been on the podium. But Piastri, all he did was tumble down the order, whilst Lando made good steps up the grid.
What the fuck is a kilometer?
Now, we all know Williams has a rocket ship in the straight lines, and Monza 23 was no different. Alex Albon was scrapping for P5, P6, but eventually finished the race in P7. Sargeant, with an equal machinery, he just really wasn't there. He was just battling for P14, P17, things along those lines. Really couldn't make any progress after his pretty poor qualifying, even though he had a bloody rocket ship in the straights. Poor race compared to Alex Albon, who absolutely cooked his components. No, not components. Competition. Good race from Albon, but, a poor race from his teammate. And last but not least, Lance Stroll. 9 times out of 10, his races are awful, but he has some good races. Let's not forget that. 2023 Singapore was a pretty bad race, but I don't remember which race it was or actually when it was. It might have been this year or last year, but there was this one race where he hit the wall a couple times in Baku. And I think that was his worst. There's probably been more, but there's so many that I just really can't remember. And I'll be reading them and I'll make my opinion, because there's so many races that I really just can't think of a certain one that is worse than all of them, because they're all pretty bad. Anyway, put it down in the comments. Subscribe, like, hope you enjoyed, and peace.